Matt Perkins, Bleav in Badgers, covers Wisconsin. And Matt, remind me, you also do the Bleav in Vandy show, correct? You cover the Vandy Vol or Vandy Vols, I shouldn't have said Vandy Commodores, excuse me.
I used to be on the Vandy beat. That is correct. No longer. My wife's a Vandy alum. We're Vandy season ticket holders. But dude, it just got too depressing. Like it was literally like it was taking away from my mental health so much to have to follow that team on a day in and day out basis that after the first Clark Lee season, I was like, I'm out. I'm sorry guys, I can't do this anymore. Like this is it's
Right.
just not it's not healthy for me. And so and I was also by that time I was really full time on the Wisconsin beat, also editor in chief over at MikeFarrellSports.com,
Right.
contributing for Badger Blitz, Rivals Network, and hosting a Legal Motion college football podcast with our friend Corey Burton. So
Yep.
I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't do it anymore.
Well, I feel you there, but I remember the last time we had talked, you were on the beat and you were like, dude, I don't want to be here. You
Yeah,
know, it's like
and I'm
Matt,
not anymore.
right. It's like, do you remember when Magic left the Lakers? I won't be here. So good. But glad to have you on here, man, because obviously LSU and Wisconsin, as T-Pain would say,
Mm-hmm.
face off. And look, the last time that these two teams played, kind of got a little chippy, which led to the Les Miles being fired, Ed Orgeron being hired. That's what the last memory of LSU fans with Wisconsin. When this was announced, I guess, what were your earlier thoughts of this game and this bowl game with going to Rely Quest?
Okay, so first of all, super selfishly, I live in Nashville. Obviously, I'm a Wisconsin guy, but I live in Nashville. Every single projection had them going to the Music City Bowl. And I already had a live show set up with guests who were going to be going to the bowl game no matter what. So honestly, I was devastated. I was completely
I bet.
devastated. I was ready for the Music City Bowl against Texas A&M or Auburn. And now they have to go play the artist formerly known as the Outback Bowl,
Right.
and I can't travel. I'm not traveling to Tampa. I'm sorry, all my friends who are in who live in the state of Florida, but I'm not traveling to Tampa. Especially no, that's not happening. And the Badgers have been to that bowl game so many freaking times.
Right.
Like in my 25 years of Badgerdom, give or take, I think they've been to that bowl game 5 times, and it's always the Outback Bowl. So I'm honestly like I was really bummed. I was really bummed. I'm excited to see. Especially if Jane Daniels is going to play. Like I like that. I love that receiver room with Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. Like I want to watch those guys, especially against Ricardo Hallman, who today was named a third-team All-American
Right.
at corner. I'm really excited to see him take on Malik Neighbors, who I think he's going to be basically matched up with, assuming that Neighbors plays or Brian Thomas or who was ever playing for them, because he's been a stud corner. He's done a really, really good job. One of the few bright spots on what was, obviously built up as a really huge season for the Badgers, and 7-5 feels pretty flat for a lot of Wisconsin fans, and that's understandable.
So, look, I thought that Wisconsin managed pretty well after the Mordecai news, him going down. You have a young guy coming in, and look, battled Ohio State to the very end. And to be real with you, and Matt, for me, and maybe you have a different thought on this, I had not watched a lot of Wisconsin football until then. And until that game, I'm like, you know what, man? They might be losing. But you could tell Ryan Day doesn't want to be here. And they fought the entire year. Am I wrong in saying that this team, like, hey, LSU, you had a good year. It's 9-3. Look, if you don't buckle your chin strap, Wisconsin's coming to pop you in the mouth. Like, that's the vibe that I get in watching film. That's the vibe that I get now and going back and watching an Ohio State game. Am I right there? Would that be a good pulse of what the first year's been under the new regime at Wisconsin?
I would say I'd say you're probably like 80% of the way there. I think that there is naturally when you have a new regime take over, especially over for one that they fired an alumni. They didn't hire Jim Leonard, who everyone was expecting them to hire, who is obviously a legend in the program in the state of Wisconsin. Had, I think, 5 other coaches who were Badger alumni, all jettisoned. there were more divisions in the locker room than people wanted to let on. There's a lot of loyalty to Jim Leonhard, especially, completely understandably. He'd obviously been one of the best coordinators in the country for half a decade. His story is unique. Guys really bond with him. And so for him not to be there, I think there were a lot of guys who didn't necessarily trust the transition to the 3-3-5. And we saw some of the issues that had when they would get bullied a little bit up front. I think they got a lot better in the second half of the season. But if you go back and watch the Washington State game, they got annihilated. And that was one of the issues. A lot of offensive line issues. The offensive line as a unit has pretty much steadily gone downhill since 2019. And I said during the season, this is probably the worst offensive line unit in terms of 5-man units. It's 6 guys who really rotate in. That's been around in a quarter century. And what I got to shout out my podcast co-host, Matt Bernstein, the Hebrew Hammer. His line is that the Badgers started 5 right tackles this year. And I couldn't agree more. And so moving from, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, which is everything that they had seen for the last 30 years, to Phil Longo, air raid, even if you're running the ball, it's always coming out of a shotgun. There were so many offensive line issues that really just sort of short-circuited the offense from ever really getting into a rhythm until Tanner Mordecai opened it up a little bit more with his legs and things like that. He found a wide receiver 1 in Will Pauling, the slot guy, but it definitely took a minute and took a lot longer to get everyone on the same page. So I think that the team plays hard. I think the defense got vastly improved, especially in the back 8 effectively of this defense, because they're only 3 down linemen. But I still worry about going up against LSU. The defensive line has left something, has definitely left some room for improvement, as has the offensive line. And that's when you're Wisconsin, that's a real problem, because that's sort of been the bread and butter is, offensive line, running game, and then strong defensive play, especially in the front 7. They just really didn't have that this year. I mean, their best defensive players are defensive backs. This is very strange. Hunter Wohler, the safety, and Ricardo Hallman, who I mentioned a minute ago, 13-team All-American at corner, those are really the only 2 defensive standouts they had this year.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it up, because it was the second question I had, on our little handy dandy, sheet here. Them being 26 in passing yards allowed, okay, what they did or were able to do in the secondary. And like you mentioned, if Malik goes, if Brian Thomas Jr. goes, dude, you're talking about 2 All-Americans going at it, right? Yep. And so I think that, now Malik needs 22 yards to break the all-time LSU record in receiving yards. Maybe he does go. But let's not mistake that this is going to be that would be a hell of an NFL battle that we would see on the field, which feels a little crazy. I want to circle back to one thing that you said, is that your co-host had said that you started 5 right tackles this year.
Yep.
The question I would have is, LSU defensively was really bad in the front 7. Okay, horribly bad. Who wins that? I mean, were they so bad that you think LSU can do something, or were they just kind of just out of position? Maybe they can figure some things out against a very struggling LSU defense.
I mean, Indiana and Northwestern are doing stuff. So, it's can LSU. Yeah, I mean, LSU's talent is there. I mean, you look at a Mason Smith, you look at those guys, those dudes should be able to push them around. It's going to be a little interesting to see. There's rumors afoot that 2 of the starters may still enter the portal, may declare for the draft this year. That's a little bit up in the air at the moment, but assuming that the starting 5 is still intact for the bowl game, I still think that they're going to get beat up a little bit. The biggest issue, this might be, I hope this isn't too in the weeds for you, but
it won't be for this show, I promise you.
Okay. The issue that this team has had is snapping the ball in the shotgun. Tanner Bortolini, who is a genuinely wonderful human being who I got to meet this summer, hang out with at Squat Fest. Bernie and I were there. It was an amazing event. Tanner Bortolini is a guard masquerading as a center, and his snaps are lollipops, getting back to Tanner Mordecai or whoever the quarterback is. And because if you go and you watch any offense that has that's running out of the shotgun all the time, the ball is snapped back at a decent pace, and it takes a quarter of a second to get, let's say it takes a quarter of a second to get to the quarterback. His
Right.
snaps are taking 3/4 of a second to a full second to get to the quarterback. And the timing is so off because of that. Because you think about it, right? You're in practice when you're taking snaps 7-on-7, the coach is tossing you that ball really quick, right? And so your timing is off by half a second. And this is my personal theory. The timing of the snaps is the reason why this offense can't get in sync and in gear when it comes to game day, because it's just been way too inconsistent. They had brought Jake Renfro in from Cincinnati to play center, who had been an All-American center at Cincinnati. He was injured out all year, even though, he was questionable every week and then never
Yeah, and
played.
LSU was highly after Renfro too. Like, it
Mhm.
was a Wisconsin LSU battle. I remember that.
Yeah, and so that was an issue. I Bleav that if he had been healthy and he had been able to play, Bortolini then is able to play his natural position of right guard. And you have actually a very different offensive line and a very different unit that could have been more productive. But Bort really struggled with the snaps. He got better as the season went on, but it genuinely wasn't until like week 9, week 10, like really in the Nebraska game is really when I started to notice it getting a lot better. But by then, that's the 11th game of the season.
Right.
And you're 5-5 in that game, you're 6-5, but it's not enough. And so that was I think that was one of the more persistent issues that had huge ripple effects for the entire offense.
Makes sense, because you're kind of just setting me up. It's like you've done this before. Because my next question was, look, the Braedyn Locke, right? Locke. Yeah,
Locke.
okay. The Locke kid, and watch him, me and the team watching him today. The biggest thing that we walked away from, guys, all right, there it is. So the number 3 thing we walked away from is like, dude, if this guy gets a little bit more accurate, he's there with his decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's 5 touchdowns, 1 interception ratio, and I'm like, but damn, he's only connecting on 50% of his passes, right? Like, I mean, it was so wild that you could be that process oriented and you're that inaccurate. I'm like, that doesn't really work well. Those kind of quarterbacks that process mentally are usually really accurate on timing. So that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that Locke, I mean, to me, at least today, I'm like, man, this kid can throw. Like, he knows what he's seeing and getting it there. Something's just off. Do you think it's just like you mentioned, just that timing? Do you have you liked what you've seen from him, the
Yes,
quarterback?
if you go back, and so if you go back to the spring game, and in the spring game, Tanner Mordecai looked awful, and Braedyn Locke absolutely ripped apart the first team defense. 3 touchdowns, no picks, like looked genuinely incredible in the spring game as QB2, which was a big surprise, right? He had been brought in after his freshman year. He transferred up from Mississippi State, and they'd also brought in Nick Evers, who was a really
Right.
ballyhooed prospect from, I think, Flower Mound, Texas, was at Oklahoma, transferred out after a year. And Locke had clearly picked up the offense so fast. But then when it got to game speed in Madison, when he was starting games, right? He's starting against Illinois, he's starting against Ohio State, Indiana, those kind of games. Like, it seemed like things were just going a little bit too fast. Like, things were just going a little bit too fast. And you saw this. There was on a key 4th and 2 against Northwestern that could have won the game, for at least putting them in position to tie or win the game. 4th and 2, there's Will Pauling, receiver, is wide open in the flat, and I mean no one within 10 yards of him sails it right over his head. And it's like, this is some of the more basic stuff that you expected him to get in his 3rd or 4th start, in being in this system for his entire life. So that was a little bit interesting. It's also, I think, pretty indicative that the Badgers announced, Tyler Van Dyke has signed, a couple hours ago. And so, some people thought, okay, it was going to be Locke's job, like, pretty much no matter what. Nope. It's going to be Tyler Van Dyke. It's now Tyler Van Dyke is going to be QB1 for the spring. But for this game, Mordecai's going to play. So, but I do think we'll see a little bit of Locke as well, especially if things turn out like I imagine they will, and LSU is up big in the second half.
Do you think? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to circle back to that, because let me tell you something, man. I'm as nervous as a long-tailed cat sitting next to a rocking chair. Do you think Locke hits the portal then?
No.
Okay.
His little brother's coming next year. His little brother is a
So
2025 quarterback.
Wisconsin going to have 3 dudes that's got significant snaps in college at the quarterback position.
Next year they'll have 2. They'll have Van Dyke and Locke because Mordecai will have graduated. Evers hasn't really seen any college action yet, and then they've got Mabry Matoyer coming in as a true freshman, who's a 4-star, who's one of the more notable quarterback recruits badges they've gotten in a long time. Big kid, like 6'6", 230. Like, Trevor Lawrence Light got the same hair as well. So that's going to be really interesting to watch in the future. The Van Dyke thing, though.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What do you think about him?
I think it's really interesting because my assumption was, in the limited conversations I've had with people in the program, some coaches, that I was really expecting them to go for more of a Daquan Finn, someone who has a true dual threat. And because we saw the offense open up when Mordecai really started to use his legs. Locke's not a runner. He's just not a runner. And I think the world of Locke in a lot of ways. I think he's incredibly intelligent. I think he processes super well, like you mentioned, but he doesn't have the physical traits. Tyler Van Dyke has those physical traits, but he's been in so many different offenses under so many different coordinators that I worry that his wires have been crossed a little bit at some points.
Right.
That being said, his best year came under Rhett Lashley. The system that Lashley and Longo run are much more similar to anything that Tyler Van Dyke ran in the last couple seasons.
Right.
In the Cristobal era, because we know what Mario Cristobal wants to do. Mario Cristobal is a caveman. He literally just wants to take a rock and just smash you all day. And I don't think that's what Van Dyke does well. I think Van Dyke, when he has a second to be back there, process, get it out, he can make those deep outs. He can make those deeper throws.
We saw it against A&M, man.
I know. And so I like the pickup in a lot of ways. I will be more bullish on it once I see the offensive line show that they can actually be in sync and protect.
Yeah, and look, it's like 2 steps forwards, one step back with Van Dyke a lot of times. Sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and so he's been so hot and cold, but like Rhett's offense played in it, okay, when he, been a part of it personally, okay, it's not that difficult to learn,
Nope.
like it's the same air raid type principles, okay, with a little bit longer name, all
Yep.
right? So it's basically that same thing as well. Matt Perkins joining us, Bleav in Badgers. Also, give me the Mike Farrell thing.
Mike Farrell, MikeFarrellSports.com. I'm the editor-in-chief over there. So yeah, we're doing some really good stuff, putting out a lot of really interesting content these days. Mike is just a machine, always has been, always will be.
You guys are killing it in the portal, dude. Like all y'all's portal news. It's insane.
Thank you.
How much are you refreshing the portal?
It's basically just like a direct IV into my veins at all times. Like I'm basically like I'm like Matrix style in the portal at this point. It's like tapped into my body.
I'm gonna start calling you Keanu Reeves. Let me ask you this: what grade would you give Fickell and the staff this year?
I give him a B.
I think that's fair.
I give him a B. I think that expectations were built. Like, we're really high for a lot of reasons. Fickell's been one of the most coveted coaches for a while now. To come out of a group of 5 school. They brought in Phil Longo, ballyhooed offensive coordinator, who's done wonders with Sam Howell and Drake May and Matt Corral and all these other guys. They bring in a ton of transfers, especially the wide receiver position, the defensive back positions. There's a lot of positive buzz there. It's been a lot of very proactive social media. You see the social media department has gotten, much more engaged. There's been a doubling down from especially the athletic director, Chris McIntosh, former Badger offensive tackle, who was on those Rose Bowl teams in the late 90s.
Right.
And there's been a very concerted effort to build a lot of goodwill because they knew there were going to be a lot of people who didn't love the fact that they really stepped out of the Wisconsin way that has been evident since Barry Alvarez stepped on campus in 1990. And it's a big fundamental shift. So there was a lot of things that they want to get out there. They've been really great about the media. I will say, this new staff is much more media friendly, of which of course led to more higher expectations from the media.
Fickell. Y'all interviewed Fickell a while back, correct?
Yeah, we've had Fickell, and we've had every assistant coach.
Isn't it
on the
great
show.
when coaches allow you to talk to coordinators and position coaches? Isn't that great just to pick their brain.
It's fantastic, and I will give a shout out Brady Collins, the strength and conditioning coach. He's the one who kind of got the ball rolling. Came by. He joined us on the show. I mean, you've had strength and conditioning guys on the show before. You know they don't shut up and they tell the best stories.
They
and so
do.
we were supposed to have him. We were supposed to have him for 25 minutes, and we ended up going an hour 45. And so after that, I knew we were in good shape. But yeah, I mean, we had Longo, Mike Tressel, Coach Fick in person. I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of that interview. We went down to Squat Fest in Madison. Got Coach Fick in person and got him for about 35 minutes. Just the three of us, and like fully live, everything. It was awesome, man. Like, and so I think that's why there was so much expectations coming into the season. Oh, Tanner Mordecai's come in. He put up 72 touchdowns in the past 2 seasons at SMU. What's going to happen? Well, it didn't really click. Braylon Allen, All-American talent at running back, but he just wasn't a natural fit. He's Derrick Henry trying to play a position that is tailor-made for a completely different skill set, right?
Right.
And so like Chez Malusi, who actually was the more productive back, was the better player early in the year, he gets hurt out for the season, and I think that did not help at all, because he was a much more explosive guy, was someone who could get to the edge quicker. Braylon, once he gets ahead of steam, you don't want to tackle him, but it takes him a second to get that head of steam, whereas Chez was accelerating super fast. And so I think that's why it's really interesting to see Braylon's not going to play in the bowl game. He's declared for the draft and is leaving. They've got 3 freshman running backs coming in next year, all of them 4-star guys who are all going to compete for a lot of playing time next year. But because of that, the backs that you're going to see in this game for Wisconsin are Jackson Aker, who was a fullback before this year. You're going to see Cade Giacomelli, who came in as an athlete. This is I guess it's his first real season playing running back. I guess second season playing running back. But, again, he was a high school athlete, like, one of those kids, played quarterback for his high school because he was the best athlete, that kind of thing. And then who knows, like a couple of walk-ons. And so it is a very, very thin running back room at the moment. And, that's going to be tough without Braylon Allen to get anything going that way. They're going to have to rely on the pass game. Chimere Dike, team captain and nominal wide receiver 1, has decided to hit the portal as a grad transfer, so he's not playing in the game. Skylar Bell, who received, I think, the 3rd most snaps at wide receiver, not playing in the game. So it's going to be, especially as it comes down to skill position players for the Badgers, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. And that even goes back to the fact that entering the season, the week before fall camp started, their top 2 tight ends both retired from football.
Right.
And so, I mean, like, they're starting basically a true freshman who was one of the kids that had an offer from Colorado. Was committed to Colorado, and Dion cast aside, said, no, I don't want you, in Colorado. And, the kid ends up actually being really good, freshman all Big Ten, that kind of stuff. So it's been a really, on roster wise, it's been a really, really interesting year to see sort of not just the turnover, guys having to try new positions and stuff like that, new schemes. And so I think everyone in and around the program underestimated just how much of a lift it was going to be in order to get that roster up to speed in 2 completely new schemes than they had been running for the past 30 years.
Last question, I'll get you out of here. I've been asking every guest, because Joe DeLeon and myself on Ruffino and Joe show yell at each other the whole time. So I'm just getting everybody's thoughts. Your thoughts on the playoffs and the 4 teams. Yeah, you can throw Florida State in there, but what do you think is going to happen this year's playoff?
What's the okay? So my
Yeah,
2-pronged question. First of all,
Bama, Michigan, and Washington, Texas.
So what's the purpose of the playoff? Is the playoff to get the 4 most deserving teams, or is it to get the 4 best teams on paper?
What do you think?
In my perfect world, it's the 4 most deserving teams. What does Herm Edwards say? You play to win the game. And as much as Herm has a bunch of warts, he ain't wrong on this one. And Florida State won all their games. And when you're going to reward, when Liberty gets the group of 5 at-large bid, and the reasoning behind it is they just kept winning, despite playing the 133rd ranked strength of schedule this year.
Right.
And they get the reward over an SMU team who played a way tougher schedule, has way better metrics on paper. Once you factor in strength of schedule and that sort of stuff, well, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. So
I agree with that.
personally, I would have had Florida State in, but that is because, like, to me, like, what matters, it matters more what you put on the field than what you have on paper. So honestly, to me, like, I think Florida State was one of the 4 most deserving teams. Are they one of the 4 best teams as constituted right now? Probably not, but I also wouldn't put it past that defense to shut down anyone, because between Jared Verse, who's big number 55, plays defensive tackle, who was the transfer, Braedyn Fisk.
Yep.
I mean, they've got dudes. Like, they've got dudes on that defense. And so in my heart, I want Washington to win it all. I want Washington to win it all so badly.
Okay.
I'm mad that my dream national title matchup from those 4 teams would have been Washington, Texas. That's actually the game I would have wanted to see most.
The Alamo Bowl last year too, by the way.
Yeah,
we got
exactly
last year. Yeah,
exactly. But you know what? I think Alabama's going to win it all. I really do. I just don't. It's going to happen, and we're all going to be sad. And we're all going to be sad. And this is all very preventable. This was we could have been the committee could have guaranteed a new winner. But what do? No, they got to put in Alabama. So I personally disagree with it. I would have had Michigan 1, Washington 2, Florida State 3, and Texas 4. But because those were, I thought, the 4 most deserving teams. But
you know, Matt, before I get you out of here, just making this statement, we were talking about this. You brought up Liberty, okay, which made me think of talking about this again. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Alabama beats Georgia next year in the SEC title game, and Georgia's number 5, and they got to play number 12 Liberty. Good luck.
Oh, I mean, that would be a joke. That would be a
and so, you know, even Tulane, right? Like, so I know the people here in Louisiana don't like me saying this. Tulane's getting their asses kicked. All right. Like, they're going to get their teeth kicked in. I've seen that team probably 9 times this year. All right. Watching them play, they're going to get their teeth kicked in. So you want these group of 5s in there. Sounds good. But all I'm going to say is it's one thing of a 13-0 ACC champion getting in versus Tulane or Liberty. So,
and this ain't a Lincoln Riley defense they're going against like last year.
Right.
Georgia's a real team. Like, they're not USC. They're not a joke team.
Right.
Don't say that just because I went to UCLA for grad school. Well,
Boise State ruined everything when they did that damn Statue of Liberty. Okay, and everybody thinks Goliath is just going to always fall. It's not. Goliath is too big at Georgia right now for a team like Liberty. Nevertheless, Matt, tell everybody where they can catch your stuff. I know a lot of LSU fans have been asking you guys over at Bleav in Badgers, but tell everybody where they can catch it, where they can get it, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Bleav in Badgers. Check out our YouTube. Check us out anywhere you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, all Apple Podcasts, all those good things. You know, we're twice a week, every week. We got this week's a bit of an interesting week. We had the president of Four Tops, who does in stadium renovations and seating. They just had a big renovation at Camp Randall. Had him to come on and talk about that. We actually got a women's volleyball show coming up tomorrow because Wisconsin's in the Final Four. So we got a shout out to our ladies who are trying to reclaim the national title. They were champs in 2021. They lost it last year. Got to get it back this year. So we've got a former volleyball player coming on with us. We got a bunch more bowl stuff coming. We got YouTube, any podcast feed. We're on Twitter at Bleav in Badgers, BLEAV in Badgers. I'm at _Perko_. Too many underscores in my name. MikeFarrellSports.com, BadgerBlitz.com. It's everywhere, man. You know, just ask me. I'm happy to guide the way wherever it is. And also shout out to you, Blake, and shout out to Joe as well. You guys do such incredible work. I love your show. I love your sponsors. I need to get drive-through crawfish and daiquiris like that. Seeing that ad before I came on, you know, my family's from New Orleans. You know, my aunt and uncle are Tulane people, and so like that just brings me so much joy when I see that. So,
dude, so listen, I concocted this because it's a big, you know, like it's a bigger place, and like when games are on, the entire place will be full. Okay.
Yeah.
So I deceived everybody. I went to these restaurants and like this place, okay, daiquiris and crawfish. So for our post game show, all the TVs have our show on, you know, like for the post game. I'm like, I love this, you know, but Dude, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's so good. You gotta come on down, man. On me. I'll get
All
you a
right.
whole gallon of daiquiris and some crawfish.
I mean, I can't turn that down. I absolutely cannot turn that. Yo, I'll bring some beignets and we will have ourselves a grand old time.
Awesome, man. Good having you.